What happens to your brain during challenging interactions? I'm Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions, and neuroscience shows us that interpersonal mastery isn't about personality. It's about neutral pathways and brain architecture that can be systematically rewired. Oftentimes, we are relating and relying on these dirt path roads of emotional reactions instead of the superhighways and paved roads of reaction and response. And that's because of our neuropathways, our brain chemistry that is geared towards survival. When life is stressful, it is known as life or death. It is primitive brain coming in to save the day, and it loves to be important and it loves to be used. And so what we find is it finds every opportunity to stay active and alert and be able to react immediately in an effort to survive and keep its purpose. And so as you use it, as we know, it's use it or lose a phenomenon in the brain. So if you keep using it, you'll use it more and rely on it more. But if you change your neural pathways and start to neutralize and say, well, what's actually going on here? Do I need to be this reactionary? Is this life or death? Or is this just a high stress situation? Is this the worst thing that's ever going to happen to me? Or is this a growth opportunity? And so what we find is the more that we work with our brain to neutralize that immediate response that we do to get in that negative cycle, to get the emotional reactions going, the cognitive distortions are just rampant. Our attachment starts to kick off. We start to fear abandonment and fear obligation or being a burden to others. Our negative narrative kicks in. Our past is now filtering out and actually responding in our present. We're built into a perceived reality. We're invoicing others and triangulating them and our suffering and our despair. We're creating perceived expectations that give us feedback loops back into our perceived reality. Shoulda, couldas, they should and could have done something, I shoulda, could have done something. That either makes us shut down or emotionally explode. More emotional reactions, and we just keep going in the negative dynamic. And it's the downfall of our relationships. We find these negative dynamics. We feel as if our universal constructs are being threatened. We defend against them, but what we're doing is we're building and reinforcing the primitive part of our brain, the temporal lobe, silly amygdala, and it's saying survive, 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 and it's not able to see the nuances. It's not able to zoom out on the landscape. You can only zoom in this one particular thing. We're missing everything as a result of it. And so what we want to do, instead of having these quick reactions, because that's what survival is in our primitive brain, we want to take about half a second in which we can then ground and take control of our brain, start living in a response space, pulling from that neocortex, building on the prefrontal lobe, those executive functions, finding action-oriented experiences instead of these reactionary approach. And your brain is a highway of reaction and a dirt path to response. And so what we're trying to do is realize that right now all the neurons are firing in a reactionary way. But when we can find our grounding or meditation, that box breathing, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, box breathing. We're grounding in the here and now. Radical acceptance is about being in the here and now, not agreeing with what's happening, We know that we're sitting at the game because the game is important to us. The camaraderie of the game is important to us. The opportunity is important to us. It's not about the cards that are dealt. It's the activity of being at the game. We realize how much agency we have, and we let go of all the agency that we don't have. But in these reactionary mindsets, on this reaction superhighway, all you see is the agency you don't have. You see where you don't belong. You see how you're not seen and heard. You're realizing how you're not valued. And you're missing out on so many opportunities where you can neutralize the cycle and take one step towards the positive. And there's many times where it's like, God, I knew it. I knew exactly. I had the best zinger. I could have said this. I could have said that. Remember that that's the negative dynamic. Perceived expectations. And there will be often times that in the moment we want to do the right thing, or we want to have the right comeback, or we want to kind of have a certain outcome. And the reason we don't is because we're protected and we're defensive and we're reactionary, and our past is blocking our present. And remember, when that implicit past door is open, it's blocking all of our explicit memories. You trying to recall, it's like, no. This is way too important for recall. We don't need recall right now. We need to go. And if you've ever done any emergency services training, if you've ever done any military training, you know that they're not feeding you necessarily for recall. They're feeding you for motor memory. They want you to implicitly know this and just do it. This happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. Why? Because in high stress situations, we don't have nuances. We have yes or no's, and we need to click the yeses where we need to click the correct yeses. And it has to be immediate. And that's because the brain is a superhighway to reaction and a dirt path to response. If you want this superhighway to be response and not reaction, you have to train it. And you train it by consistently staying grounded and mindful. You consistently stay in an action-oriented, zoomed-out approach. You consistently are trying to find the nuances of what is a mutual benefit in this interaction. You consistently seek the validation, not the agreement, but the validation of what other people are feeling or what they're wanting out of the interaction. And instead of fighting and defending on what you think you may or may not be losing, you're grounded and secure in knowing that you are the one who has control over your internal values and beliefs. Nobody can take that from you. Nobody can strip that from you. It's yours. And you can't change others, and they can't change you. It's a beautiful thing about life. And yet in high stress situations, we're all kinds of defensive. We're all kinds of blocking. We're all kinds of, let's just get through this quickly. And when we can take a deep breath and be mindful, we can realize that there's so much more that we are capable of doing, and we don't need to go on these avoidant autopilots. But instead, we need to be grounded in the here and now. Zoom out, look at the bigger picture, and see how we can be the most effective in this situation. And these exact techniques are what's helped many executives strengthen the brain connections needed for measured responses rather than emotional reactions. Is because when we see mastering the inner game, it's all about emotional regulation. The entire crux of mastering the inner game is about social intelligence design and emotional regulation. And one will feed the other. One will get one going and the other will feed the other. And it's a constant battle if you let it. But if you ground, you find your here and now, you can have awareness, self-awareness, and you can have leadership development. And so it's not about your personality. It's about building these pathways and looking at life through a grounded lens and not letting your past overwhelm your present. And the leadership technique I'm going to reveal to you right now is this idea of reaction and response, and finding response over reactions. Because the amygdala wants to respond or wants to react quickly. It's that long hallway of doors. Where have we been in the past? How is it similar? Let's go. And response is more taking a curated approach. It's saying, well, what is going on here? What is it that other people want in this experience? What are they trying to gain? What am I trying to gain? What's the mutual benefit for both of us in this response? And how do I leverage this for a win-win? My future videos will talk more and more about the equalizer, defensive and offensive communication and conflict resolution, the empathy algorithm. Next week we're talking about predicting behavior, the negative dynamic, and all of this plays together. It's all entangled. But when we can master response, we can master all the other things as well as we grow into them and understand its nuances. And executives often face high pressure situations where measured response are crucial for effective leadership. And they do this by enhancing their prefrontal cortex. They do this by understanding that executive function is where they need to be. That if they let the amygdala call the shots, that it puts them in very dangerous situations. So here are 5 techniques to be able to overcome reaction and find a response outlook. Mindfulness and meditation. Take time every day. And I'm telling you, 30 seconds is a win if you're just starting to build your mindful journey. Don't feel like you have to do a 30-minute video and then be like, I'm such a loser, I failed. No, start with like 30 seconds, 2 minutes max. Build into a 5 and 10-minute routine. But you may think that is, I don't have time. How many times do we say I don't have time? I am telling you, 2 minutes. 2 minutes, Turkish, you have 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes to start slowing your brain down and understand what is coming up. Look at those thoughts like bubbles in front of you. And then choose, what do I want to do with these bubbles? Do I want them to come back? No. What if, let's get curious. What if I had a breeze just kind of come through and push those bubbles away? Did I lose them? Do I miss them? I don't. They weren't mine to begin with. They were all the judgment, all the shame that other people put on me. And it didn't serve me, and it didn't serve my team, and it didn't serve my decision making. Cognitive reframing is neuroplasticity of the brain, where we're looking at a situation and we're either countering with a rational statement, cognitive distortions, we're countering with a rational statement. We're looking for the shades of gray. We are looking at and doing Socratic questions. Will this serve me? Will I actually care about the result in a week, in a month, in 5 years? What am I doing? Like, what is this? How does this serve me? I want to be more curious than I want to be judgmental. So instead of saying it's a disaster, what is the opportunity? Is it a dumpster fire? Or is it a place to throw my trash? Does it give me heat when I am cold? Name the emotion. Say, I am feeling frustrated. I am feeling overwhelmed. I am feeling sad. I am feeling abandoned. And then reframe failures to learning moments rather than threats. That means stop looking at what you should and could have done or what overwhelmed you, and instead, what are my pivot points here? Yeah, I may have not handled that, but I can always come back and say, I really thought about that, and I want to come back and address it. As budding therapists, you have to get supervision, and hopefully it's good supervision. Sometimes you wonder. But as a budding therapist, I had an amazing supervisor, an amazing mentor, and I was very, very blessed to have her. And as a part of her mentorship and as her supervision, she would often say, Jen, you missed a therapeutic moment. And I'd be like, no, I asked all the right questions. And she's like, what about this? Like this, it sounded like this was something important to them. I'm sure it wasn't. And I could have probably blown it off. It probably would not have mattered. I could have blown it off and said, oh yeah, next time, if it comes up, then it's like real. Or I could do my job. I could go back to the client. I could say, hey, I know you know that I'm fresh out of school. I'm actually seeking supervision. And so I talk a lot about my clients with my supervisor. We signed a consent form for this, knowing that I would maybe sharing some information and in order for me to grow and to make sure that I'm best helping you. And I want you to know I shared your story this week. I shared how we talked about, this topic and how I responded to the topic and how you responded to the topic. And I really want to apologize. I think I missed a therapeutic opportunity. And I want us to really open up space for this. If this was something that meant something to you, I want you to know that I am here for you. And I want us to really develop this conversation. And I'm really sorry if I missed something because I was picking up on something else you were saying. And that moment of vulnerability, that moment of humility, that moment of I don't have all the answers, but I am 100% in this journey with you, and I am here to get you help, dramatically transformed our therapeutic relationship. It let them know that I am human too. That no matter what decisions they made, that there will be mistakes, and that it's okay. You can come back from any mistake that you make. You can come back from it. You can re-own it. By being honest and open and truthful with it. That humility is what creates strong dynamics. And we miss it. We miss that opportunity over and over again because we so are protective. As leaders, we want to be at the top of the chain, which means we have to be on a pedestal. And we forget that we can make mistakes. As parents, we think we have to have all the answers. It is a known implicit memory for every human being that that parents are infallible and have all the answers. They are always right. But they're not. And half the time, therapy is understanding that they're just human too. Whether they are in therapy or their children are in therapy or their adult children are in therapy, a lot of what therapy is recognizing that we're all human and we're bound to make errors. Those poor Israelites, they made a lot of errors. And you can say that they are off and they are the only ones that sin. But ultimately, even though that was thousands and thousands of years ago, we're still subjugated to the same sins and we still get in the same idolatry today. Nothing has changed because it's all in our brain. And that's that primitive reaction. It's the same primitive brain the Israelites had, who saw Moses hit a rock and bring water, who saw Moses part the Red Sea, and yet they're like, this is all you got? Bread and water? Why am I wandering around the desert for so long? I want more. Why? What did you do for me? Because we forget so quickly. And entitlement is detrimental. But it's also because of that primitive brain. It's the same brain. It's the same brain. So when you can ground, and you can pull up some executive functions, you can see things and zoom out and see things as a whole and all the pieces that add up together to make what it is, you can take so many great strides in being able to be successful. Strategic pauses and slow processing is another technique I give my executives. You don't have to have all the answers and you don't have to have them right now. You can say, that's a really good question. Let me think about that. And you're not sitting there to avoid. You're sitting there because sometimes silence is the best thing that you can do for somebody. Because silence allows people to have time to think and anticipate. And remember at that poker game, when you got up because you folded the cards because you didn't like them, you had a lot of options you could choose from. And one of those options is to sit quietly, sit back quietly, and watch all the other players. Because watching the other players helps you realize that it's not about the cards you get in the game of poker. It's about how you play the game. And 90% of that game is playing the players, not the hand. Pauses and slow processing will help people to come down and find you, to trust you, to give you a chance to respond effectively, to not feel that you're both in this rush state. If you've ever watched the infomercials, I don't know with today's, well, these kids today, but with today's TV and stuff, if you had like the ShamWow commercials or whatever, but it all ends in the same way. Act now! Really, really big. Act now! Let's go, go, go. There's only 100 left. If you're the one and we only have 99 left, if you're the one next, you could get 2 for just paying for shipping and handling. It's only $20. Go, 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 go. That is how we make emotional decisions, is we get people amped up and we get that adrenaline rising and we make really bad emotional reactionary decisions. And response says, do the opposite. Take pauses. Take long breaks. Take a deep breath. Let people emulate how you are acting in concurrence with a situation. Because if you're huffing and puffing and pacing, they are too. But if you take deep breaths, long pauses, thoughtful moments, a controlled exposure to stress, build your resiliency, you'll see that other people do it too. And we're going to talk about these collective intelligence and these group dynamics in a couple of weeks. So subscribe and stay tuned. It's really good stuff on how to really maximize on a team effort. But what we're going to look at is this resiliency. If one person makes a bad decision, the other person makes a bad decision, the next person. And there's these punk videos where these 5 people get on an elevator at varying times, and the guy getting punked is kind of just sitting there, innocent bystander. And everyone comes on the elevator and they just kind of walk in the elevator and they just stand. They don't turn around and face front. And after about the 5th person, the guy is kind of confused and looks around and just kind of silently complies and turns us back to the door. That's what we do, is we emulate the behaviors around us. So when we have a controlled exposure to stress and engage in cold exposure like cold showers or controlled physical challenges like endurance training to train and condition our brain for stress tolerance, and we practice high pressure experiences like public speaking and make these simulations to develop this emotional resilience in these times of stress and struggle. And we role play difficult situations and conversations in safe environments before they happen. We're coming at it at a more controlled way and less a reactionary way. And people see that and they want to emulate it. And my final technique for my executives to level up in response and let go of the reactions is journaling and self-reflection, is being able to own your challenges as growth opportunities, is to set intentions so that you can better yourself in the places that you are weak and the barriers that you can overcome. It's being clear and concise on what is working and where your gratitude is, and knowing that you have goals in order to meet the barriers out there. And as you write your strengths and logical processings, you find your patterns to reaction. We're actually going to do and break down in a couple weeks, so subscribe and stay tuned, a behavior chain analysis. And we're going to learn what that is and how it feeds into this new neuro highway that we are building together. And as a brain coach, a success coach, a licensed mental health therapist, I give you this, that the brain has neuroplasticity. It can be changed. And I will give you a lot of free things on here that's going to help you change the brain. But if you really want to make a lasting journey of change, I highly recommend you go into the video description, you click on the free 15-minute wellness insight, you schedule your initial consultation, and you find out how we can build a plan that is specific to you and your journey, and let's take that journey together. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up button. Share it with a friend who could use some encouragement on becoming more response-oriented. Subscribe and learn all the great things that we're going to learn in this 9-week program that I'm doing, or these 9 weeks, as I am following along in free social media ads or blogs, along with the things that we're studying in our young professionals group and our couples relationship group on interpersonal dynamics. I'm Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions. Thank you so much.